And welcome to live programming here at the More Freedom Foundation. What has happened, the most interesting news of the week, possibly the month or the year, is that Zoran Mamdani has won the Democratic Party nomination for president. And I don't know what's going on.
What has
here.
happened, the most interesting news of the week.
Okay, so I know that I'm streaming and I know I'm coming through. And I'm doing this very impromptu. I'm going to do this for about as long as I can bear for the air conditioner to be off. It's very hot here in New York City, and it is a really staggering triumph for Mamdani, a 33-year-old. I believe was he a city council member or a state assembly person or both? They tend to jump back and forth in this city, in this state that is tremendously reliant on New York City. In any normal political environment, this would be a stunning victory. A 33-year-old, relatively new face, beating Andrew Cuomo, a man twice his age, formerly governor of New York City. But what makes this particular context special and important is the tortures that the Democratic Party and the U.S. public has been putting itself through on the topic of Israel. Mamdani is not a guy that I necessarily would have gravitated towards. I think his housing policy solutions are not my housing policy solutions. I'm not 100% confident he's going to be a great mayor of New York City. He did not want to make his election about Israel. He has a pitch that is very compelling around housing, around affordability in this city. That is what he is focused on for the entirety of his campaign. However, in the past couple months, it was not Mamdani, but it was his enemies, his political enemies outside of the Democratic Party, in the Democratic Party, Andrew Cuomo himself, his main rival for this nomination, who decided to make the race about Israel. And that has made this race for the mayoralty of I believe it's probably the most Jewish city in the world by terms of population, more than Tel Aviv, more than Jerusalem. And it was not Mamdani that chose to make this election about Israel. It was his opponents that chose to make this election about Israel. And that has given this race, that choice by his opponents to make this sort of the first real, I would argue the 2024 election was actually a very real referendum on Israel, though many don't want to acknowledge it, have made this the most undeniable referendum on what the Democratic Party and what the American public in general thinks of Israel and its role in our politics. Again, Mamdani had no interest in doing this. It was his opponents who poured millions, tens of millions of dollars into this race to try to destroy him. I'm talking about Bill Ackman. I'm talking about The Atlantic. I'm talking about the New York Times. I'm talking about Palantir. I'm talking about Andrew Cuomo. I'm talking about the Democratic establishment more generally. They decided to use this as a point, to make an example out of Mamdani and say, you can't be honest about Israel. You can't talk about genocide in American politics. You're not allowed to do that. And if you do that, you won't get anywhere near power. And it is an incredible victory today. And I think an incredible illustration of a truth that I've been pushing for quite some time, which is, in fact, Israel is not that powerful in U.S. politics. And the choices that Israel's government, the world historically awful choices that the Israeli government have been making over the past 2 years do in fact have consequences. The United States is in fact not the plaything of genocidaires. And to prove that in New York City of all places, a place where in these mayoral debates, the only candidate that was, first off, in the mayoral debates, every candidate was forced to answer a series of questions on Israel, and they were expected, their standard answer is like, what foreign country would you most want to visit? Silly question to be in a mayoral debate, but the understanding was that everybody was supposed to dutifully say, Israel, I would love to visit Israel, and most of the folks in that Democratic primary did do that. Mamdani was not the only person who refused to do that or come up with a cleverer answer. But in the past couple months, when it was clear that Mamdani was getting close to pulling off a historic upset, all that we were asked to talk about by the mainstream media, by just cavalcade of rich folks, was Israel. And they made it in a referendum on Israel, and Israel lost in New York City. This is an extraordinary thing. To be clear now, Mamdani is not the mayor of New York City yet. The way that it's worked for the past couple of decades, anyway, is that the real mayoral race is the Democratic primary, which Mamdani just won, and then the later, the November election is just sort of a formality. The Republicans put up a joke candidate or what have you. That won't be the case this time around. I think a lot of people, the more serious money, I don't consider Bill Ackman or Palantir to be serious money. These are joke people. These are zero interest rate phenomenon people that thrive on the stupidity of the internet. They're not actually real people with real accomplishments. I do think there'll be more serious money, and a lot of it poured into making sure that Mamdani does not, in fact, become the mayor of New York. But I think I would caution against that. I think that would be incredibly counterproductive for the cause of Israel in the United States. Because honestly, a successful destruction of Mamdani, this charismatic guy, I mean, the reason I support Mamdani is because all of the people who advocate, I've been watching for 2 years, advocating for genocide, have decided that Mamdani is a bad person. But goddamn, this guy is charming. The day before the election, in what was already it wasn't the most historic heights of the heat wave, he walked the length of Manhattan. This is an energetic guy. This is a guy who wants to get out there and meet all kinds of people. I know I have a much younger audience, and this is a parallel that I think would make some of my own contemporaries perhaps scandalized, but would also perhaps thrill them. The closest analogy to the excitement that I've seen around the past couple days in New York is probably Obama's victory in 2008 in Iowa. This recognition that finally, a new politics is possible. Finally, there is a chance for something new and better. To the great discredit of the Democratic Party, back in Iowa in 2008, the guy who Obama was sort of turning the page away from, the horrific, murderous, disgusting establishment that Barack Obama was using as a launch pad into power in reaction to, was George W. Bush and the Republican Party. In this case, it absolutely is Donald Trump to an extent, but far more. It is far more the Democratic Party that had just covered itself in shame for its inability to speak up for the most basic human rights in Gaza. Complete inability, complete mockery. The sensible thing to do at this point would be for Israel superfans to recalculate their politics, to understand that what Netanyahu, who is really just a Republican, and the Likud party is a tool of U.S. defense contractors more than it is anything that represents Israel. I mean, is Netanyahu even still with the Likud party, or is he in some more vile right-wing conglomeration? I mean, the sensible move for Israel superfans at this point is to realize that their agenda under Netanyahu, that even at its point of its greatest victory, their 12-day war, which might give them a 12-day delay of the Iranian nuclear weapons program that they have now started by carrying out this bombing campaign. Even at that height of victory for Netanyahu, the fact that a guy who wants to talk about genocide and intifada can win a dominating victory in New York City, I think, now, frankly, if there's one thing we've learned over the past 2 years, it is that Israel superfans are stupid. And if Israel superfans are feeling shocked and like disordered by this, I assure you, if they successfully destroy Mamdani, successfully stop this like once in a generational Democratic talent from walking into the mayor's office next year, then the backlash will be all the stronger. This is Mamdani is a very carefully worded, honest, in keeping with great American traditions, international humanitarian law, a guy who is passionately committed to protecting his Jewish constituents from any kind of anti-Semitism, has real plans to put in place, real thoughts around that might actually be helpful for the problem, has earned the friendship and close political partnership of Brad Lander, one of the most prominent Jewish politicians in New York City. Yeah, you can crush. I think it's entirely possible, actually, if the Israel superfans come down on Mamdani like a ton of bricks, the way they came down on Bernie Sanders like a ton of bricks, the way they come down on AOC with a ton of bricks. And the result of coming down on Bernie Sanders and AOC and associated like left-leaning folks who are like, international law should mean something. We shouldn't be murdering brown people in large numbers. The Israel superfans can continue crushing that, and the result will be that right-wing politicians come into power, and as is becoming very clear, yesterday we had an American president cussing out the leadership of Israel as a bunch of fucking morons, more or less, as they are, of course. But like, yeah, like you can continue to crush the like well-meaning, decent, left-leaning Israel skeptic folks who want to build a better America and who want to keep the United States as something of a paragon of like world leadership when it comes to human rights, or you can have the Trumpists and others who like might kind of like Israel as a place to send all the Jews, and are certainly happy to help Israel become the destroyer of the international human rights regime that a lot of really high-profile Jewish Americans helped to set up in the 1940s and the 1950s. But yeah, I don't think that'd be a good move really for anybody. But I think that the key thing here, and this is meant to be a very brief live. As I've said, I had to turn off my air conditioner because it's a little too loud, and I can only do that for so long. I think the key thing to see here is that this idea that democracy is dead in the United States, or that there's nothing you can do against the all-powerful, puppet masters at IPAC or whatever, is frankly nonsense. The Israel lobby is a subset of the defense lobby in the United States. Despite the amount of time that I spend talking about Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all of these disgusting merchants of death, these weapons companies, they're actually a tiny part of the U.S. economy. They're not that important. They don't actually have overwhelming power. What they do have is overwhelming focus on corrupting the U.S. government. Other large industries in the United States have other things to do. They don't, focus with this laser focus on corruption, creating corruption and stupidity in Washington, D.C. The second anybody pays attention to the idiotic horrors, Israel is not our only completely worthless client state in the Middle East. I would argue on a lot of levels, Saudi Arabia and UAE have been worse for the Middle East than Israel has been. Qatar, don't get me started. If ever at any point, as Israel itself has been working very hard to do over the past 2 years, if at any point the majority of the United States, the majority of any jurisdiction in the United States, is forced to look closely at the obscenities that the U.S. military-industrial complex and its Israel lobby subsidiary have been creating in the Middle East, it's a huge loser. And that's the great lesson of these past couple months. If we simply pay attention and get enough people to pay attention to what is actually happening here, Israel instantly loses. And I think that should be a lesson to the Israel superfans, that clearly it's time to change course. If they don't change course, I mean, this is clearly the sign of the future. This is clearly, we're going to see more and more humiliations of the Israel superfans on this order, whether or not Mamdani actually makes it to the office of New York City mayor next year. As I emphasized at the beginning, this is just the Democratic Party primary. A lot of things can happen. I think there's a lot of talk about, gnashing of teeth, and it's been really satisfying watching people like David Frum, the author of the Axis of Evil speech for George W. Bush that declared war on Iran 23 years ago, who thought he was a Democrat now. It's fun to watch that kind of thing. But I got to say, this morning is probably the worst morning. The person who's the saddest this morning has got to be Kamala Harris. Because she made a judgment call. She trusted Joe Biden. She trusted a lot of people in her party who told her that, you just can't do it. You just, it's horrible what's happening in Gaza, but you just can't buck the Israel superfans. You got to just suck it up and say there's no daylight, and there's no way to win an election in the United States if you question Israel at all. Well, New York City, proudly and awesomely, one of the many things I love about my city, one of the most Jewish, I think probably the most Jewish city on the planet by population, just voted in a guy who isn't gonna, throw hissy fits around the term intifada and isn't gonna lie about the genocide that's happening in Gaza. So Kamala Harris just can see the enthusiasm, can see the way this guy was embraced as he walked up and down Manhattan Island the day before his election, and see, my God, if I had just said the first word against Israel in my campaign just 6 months ago, just 8 months ago, we'd be in the Kamala Harris administration right now, no question. And I think that's the most important lesson here, is that the Israel lobby, the Israel superfans, the IPAC, the Apartheid Defamation League, so the Apartheid Defense League, and Jonathan Greenblatt, these people are not actually powerful in the United States. What they benefit from is a lack of attention, and a lot of money and attention and stupid stuff that they say. Stupid stuff like, if we bomb Iran, everything's going to be solved. We've bombed Iran, and the only result has been a nuclear program that is no longer being inspected, and an Iranian public that is probably now finally convinced that they need a nuclear weapon. Like, it's a ton of just nonsense is funneled into U.S. politics, stuff with no support, no real truth to it. And what we saw last night in New York City was an injection of truth, an example of the facts. So what is this? Okay, I'm behind all of this, but Mamdani isn't even that anti-Zionist. He said that believes Israel has a right to exist. Yeah, that's the thing, is Mamdani did not make this race around Israel. He didn't. It was his opponents that made this a referendum on Israel. Yeah, nobody in the United States is going to say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Yeah, it's a country that exists. It's an absurdity to assert that it does not. In all American politics, including right here. So yeah. But yeah. Do you think America will stop supplying Israel with billions of dollars? No, I don't think we're going to instantly stop supplying Israel with billions of dollars. But I do think that if Israel thinks it can continue serving up Netanyahu and his genocides and his invasions of 5 separate countries at this point, ongoing invasions and attacks on 5 separate countries at this point, if Israel thinks it can continue to sell that to us, Israel is delusional, and Israel superfans are delusional. And if they continue to attempt to push that on us, they will get more and more nights like last night and more mornings like today. I mean, just on Zoran Mamdani himself, I think that a lot of his sort of stronger leftist rhetoric or plans, I don't know, public grocery stores. I actually am somewhat progressive on the national level, and I would really like the next Democratic president to rein in Wall Street a lot. And if you rein in Wall Street a lot, then you're going to kind of leave a New York City mayor with a lot less money to play with. And I think that Mamdani's plans depend on that. But you know what? Like, the Israel lobby got to me, frankly. They made this election a referendum on Israel, and I started seeing Mamdani as my guy. And I'm now pretty committed to him being New York City mayor. I think I'm pretty committed to, and frankly, the more obvious and transparent and vicious the campaigns against him before the mayoral election in November are, the more committed I'm going to be to Mamdani. So yeah, it's interesting. There's a broader question: is like, can a progressive mayor do well? And I think that Mamdani knows that that's an open question. There's certainly a lot of talk in Democratic politics that, really the main problem is that we've been too progressive, and what we need to do is deregulation. And I think that sort of abundance approach or whatnot has some truth to it. And I think Mamdani has acknowledged this in some of his speeches, is that he needs to make New York City a model. He needs to make New York City a place that proves that Democratic mayors of big blue progressive cities can do a good job. And honestly, I think this kid has the energy to do it. Like, I think it's possible, and I'm eager to see what he can do. There's certainly multiple examples across U.S. politics everywhere, of people who were ahead of their time or simply weren't good enough to pull off what they were trying to pull off. And you can see this in both ideological directions. Barry Goldwater in 1964 was a famous flop. Was one of the, I think it was one of the bigger landslides in U.S. history. How badly Barry Goldwater, the standard bearer of libertarian conservatism, lost in 1964. By 1980, his version of libertarian conservatism under Ronald Reagan marched into power and has ruled this country for the past 45 years. If you think back to the progressive era, both Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson were big and successful enough politicians who, we know their names 100 years later, which is not the same for a lot of the presidents around them. But they were both kind of failures. They were progressive guys who also were big warmongers, who tried to do all kinds of things and really didn't pull it off. FDR really pulled it off and defined American and world politics for 40 years, almost half a century. You see this over and over again. And I think a lot of the abundance people are like, well, you know what? San Francisco had a progressive mayor and progressive governance, and that was just a complete nightmare failure. Well, if you come to power, and honestly, you can defend Obama in this way as well in some ways. If you come to power and intend to change things in a positive, progressive way, and you are constantly opposed and can't really actually do anything other than symbolism, and the things that you do are undermined and become crap. I mean, the Chicago mayor is very progressive and famously not very successful. San Francisco mayor, famously progressive, not very successful. But what these folks have done is sort of chipped away at have chipped open a larger realm of the possible that Mamdani is walking through. And its personality also matters. Woodrow Wilson had the power to completely shape the world, arguably in some ways more powerful than FDR himself, but he didn't have the personality for it. He was rigid, he was racist, he didn't understand the opportunity he had, and he failed. I'm not convinced that progressive mayors everywhere are great people with great plans and great ideas and the right energy. I think Mamdani might have the right energy for New York City. And just as FDR came roaring out of the state of New York, I think you can imagine a world where Mamdani is going to be bringing real progressive change, or Mamdani's successors are going to be bringing real progressive change, a New Deal for the United States that the United States desperately needs at this moment. Or he could, be a complete wackadoodle and a sort of as much of a punchline joke as Eric Adams is. Also possible. But I have expressed on this channel many times before that I believe that the Reagan era has run out of gas. 2016 convinced me that the Reagan era, the sort of pro-business fundamentalism, neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, that had this country had been powered by from Carter, from sort of the late 1970s until this very day was defunct, was over, we're just desperately looking for what's next. Donald Trump and Joe Biden are two geriatric men who have failed to show what's next. And I look at Zoran Mamdani and I see the possible green shoots of what's next. Is it going to be Zoran Mamdani, or is it going to be like, young people in the Republican Party like J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley, who also talk about how we need to get away from pro-business fundamentalism and we need to start figuring out how to use government again. There is no greater laboratory in the country, perhaps the world, for making progressive governance work and work massively successfully than New York City. And I think that, interestingly, Mamdani has also managed to win while cutting through one of the more cursed cultural issues, the questions around, Israel-Palestine and whatnot. And I think it's, honestly, I'm not just excited that the Israel lobby was humiliated last night. I'm excited for my country and what the potential of a better, saner, more powerful, frankly, more economically successful for everybody country that a New York City that just tries some new things out under a charismatic, energetic, young politician. I'm excited about what that could look like. But, not guaranteed to happen. Mamdani might not even make it to the mayor's office. But it's a very interesting day. It's a very interesting evening. It's a very auspicious morning. And I think, as folks, regular followers of the channel know, I've been hitting it rather hard with the Israel and the Iran and the Trump insanity. But it's nice to sort of close that cycle of constant coverage with some really, I think, some really positive, really happy news. And let's see more. Let's see more of that. I mean, fundamentally, just because I want to go big picture, and I haven't fallen into heat stroke yet. A lot of what's wrong in the world right now is U.S. empire, and unlike most, perhaps delusionally and selfishly, I am not yet convinced that American empire going away would make everything better. I am convinced that a better American empire would make everything better. So to have a progressive internationalist politician focused on actually making life better for all people instead of a few rich companies in charge of one of the most powerful cities in the world, that's incredibly hopeful, for everything. When we look out at our news, I mean, last night, so many times I meet people on the streets or at parties and they're just like, oh, I just can't follow the news anymore. It's all so horrible. And it's not some horrible, nasty world that made the Ukraine-Russia war, that made the absolute horror show that is the Middle East, that destroyed North Africa by taking out Libya. It's not like some mystery, this, oh, the world's just nasty, or is this what multipolarity looks like? No, it's the United States. It is dumb decisions made by the United States. I mean, Donald Trump is a clown, is a both a symptom and a cause of our extreme chaos, but he, with his tweets, has literally, by tweeting, has stopped war between India and Pakistan and between Israel and Iran over the past 2 months. The United States is still essentially all powerful. And the idea of a returning to the roots of that all-powerful American empire, those roots being FDR, those roots being internationalism, those roots being four freedoms, one of which I recall being freedom from want for all Americans and for all people. This is incredibly hopeful. This is incredibly exciting, for me anyway. I'm sure there are many of my listeners who'd be much happier to see U.S. empire collapse with the spiraling Trumpian nastiness and civil war or what have you. But I think that the election of Mamdani, who just is the most compulsively bridge-building person you will ever meet. I mean, this guy, like, came pretty close to Andrew Cuomo in Staten Island, which is, a very conservative, very Republican borough of New York City. Like, Mamdani's here to make friends. There are a lot of rich pricks, primarily, military-industrial complex-related folks, like Palantir specifically. Isn't it interesting that a military-industrial complex defense company like Palantir would be dumping tons and tons of money into the New York mayoral election? There are a lot of pricks who want to keep you afraid, like Palantir, who want to keep you backing genocide and backing destruction of other countries, so everybody hates us and we have to buy more weapons. I think that I don't want to put too much weight on this Mamdani fella. He's one very fallible young man, as we are all fallible. He's going to have a lot stacked up against him in this mayoral race. And he's going to have a lot stacked up against him as mayor. I mean, it's entirely possible that he has a glorious victory and gets absolutely cut out at the knees moving forward. But anyway, today I'm optimistic and I'm rambling and I'm very hot. It's very hot in New York City. Is there like a question or something like that? What will happen in the general election? That's a great question. We don't know. We shall see. There's actually not a lot of organic reasons. Oh, I think Loga asked about Curtis Sliwa, I can never remember which that is, who's a fascinating character. This is the guy who founded the Guardian Angels back in the 1980s. This was like, basically in the 1980s, New York City was legitimately dangerous. It's kind of fascinating. I'm just old enough to remember New York City in the 80s and 90s. Like, I would come, not very often, but I would occasionally, as a teenager in the mid-90s, I would come to New York City and like drink a 40 ounce on St. Mark's Place or what have you. And it was like legitimately like violent and scary place in the 80s and the 90s. People who are 10 years younger than me don't really get that. And like during COVID, as with everything else in this country, there was a bit of backsliding. Things got a little more violent. Things got a little more chaotic in New York City. For people 10 years younger than me, it's like, oh my God, New York City's falling into chaos. Oh. And for people who are my age, 45, and remember the 90s and the 80s, I was a kid in the city in the 80s, remember what a legitimately scary and dangerous New York City was like. So we're a little less panicked. Curtis Sliwa, to get back to your question, I'm not sure. Have the Republicans already nominated him as their candidate? In which case, there's no creditable Republican. Is a guy in the 1980s who decided, as a reaction to the out of control crime of the 1980s, he formed a group called the Guardian Angels, and they would literally patrol New York City subways with these red berets, and I think they like did kung fu and stuff. or something, or was it karate? I guess it was the '80s, and Japan was all the rage. So maybe like, so yeah, there were these like very. It's this very weird. I remember thinking it was kind of cool as a kid, and like my mom was like, "That no, 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 Robert, that's not cool." These sort of like random dudes in like red berets, like supposedly patrolling the subways with like martial arts or whatever, which was kind of a ridiculous, ridiculous thing all in all. But he became iconic. He's an iconic figure of 1980s New York. I think he is Curtis Sliwa. I mean, there is a deep Republican tradition in New York City. New York City is vast. Staten Island and parts of Queens are basically, well, they're more urban than anywhere else in the country, but they're also kind of very suburban, and they do have a lot of like reactionary white people. And Curtis Sliwa is sort of like an icon of that. He's also, I don't think, I mean, all respect to an icon of New York City, but like I don't think he's generally seen as a serious candidate. I think he's, had multiple wives, is perhaps not the most stable of characters, may not have a ton of governing ideas. I think he's recently been sort of the go-to Republican nominee because he's anti-crime, and that's like a perceived benefit for Republican politicians going back decades. So can you interview Mamdani? I'd be delighted to interview Mamdani. But, I think I'd be competing with every news network in the country and, frankly, a fair amount in the world to get the Mamdani interview at this point. But, hey, if someone on his team sees this, I'd love to interview Mamdani. We'll definitely set that up. Yeah. LOL, tried growing up in Philly. Did somebody said 2005 Baghdad? It was a lot worse than 1990s New York. I will tell you that for sure. Also, both of those the product of American management. Yeah, I think I am hot, and we've been doing this for a bit, and yeah, thank you all so much. There is no more Freedom Foundation without the patrons. If you're new here, I do. Over the past couple weeks, I've been doing a ton of live coverage. Honestly, I think my live coverage of the Iran-Israel conflict is a lot better than really any coverage of the Iran-Israel conflict. I think I just read a lot more books than most people who cover this. And it's kind of flattering the way that some of my coverage manages to be confirmed after the fact. I just tend to get the calls more right than most. You can find those on the live tab of this very YouTube channel you're watching this on. If you want some more honest, more serious coverage of the Israel-Iran conflict. I also have videos. I've been posting a ton lately, doing a lot of live production and whatnot. Every month I do 2 live productions for the patrons only. I also have a Discord server that is also for the patrons only. So if you sign up on Patreon, you can get the More Freedom Foundation's quality live analysis twice a month guaranteed, and just for the patrons. The Discord server is a bunch of really dedicated folks who care a lot about the world and know a lot about the world. It's my starting point when I want to research a new topic, and I also really value the monthly discussions we have there. I've written a book called Avoiding the British Empire, talking about how the British Empire and the U.S. Empire are a lot more similar than advertised, and how the United States is making a lot of the same mistakes. My work is available here on this YouTube channel, the More Freedom Foundation. On TikTok is the More Freedom Foundation. I think I'm More Freedom on Blue Sky. I am the goal. Oh no, that's not private. It's not my private Instagram. I am Robbo Law on Twitter. What else? Pitching. Anyway, I wish Soron Mamdani the best. I wish the people of Gaza, the people of Tel Aviv, the people of Tehran, the people of Syria, Yemen, the Sudan, Libya, Americans. I wish everybody peace and prosperity. I think, frankly, you can see the building blocks of some of that world peace and prosperity in Mamdani's victory last night, and I hope we can build on that. And yeah, thank you all so much for showing up. And yeah, it's just, man, I did this sort of impromptu because I saw that like some CNN personality, like Chris Salitza or whatever, had like 50,000 views on the Mamdani election. I'm like, he's not saying anything useful or educational on that. I figured I might jump in and do a bit. All right. Thank you all for being here. Y'all are the best. Certainly be grateful if you'd consider signing up on Patreon and liking and subscribing and commenting and all of that. Yeah, I think my hope is my hope is that the next time I'll be going live will be on. Next time I'll be going live will be on Saturday or Sunday for the patrons only newscast this weekend. So, all right, thanks so much. Of course, if something else happens, maybe I'll go live again later this week. All the best. Thank you so much.